Hey everybody, welcome back to Library Says. My name is Jamie and I'm long overdue for my May wrap up, but before I talk about anything else, I want to talk about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. And statistically in our country, Black Lives Matter less. Which means that not only are crimes being committed, but human rights, basic human rights are being violated. And it's unacceptable, and there is an extreme need for change and for reform. So, I am linking in my description box some ways that you can help if you haven't already, petitions that still need signatures, funds that still need donations. A lot of bail funds and things have already capped out at how many donations they need, which is wonderful, but there's still more. So if you have money to give, I highly encourage you to do that. If you don't have money, there are videos you can watch that are full of ads, and all of the revenue from those videos goes to these funds. So you can donate even without money if you're not able to. All of that's going to be linked in the description box. So what can I do as someone with such inherent privilege in circumstances like this, in a time like this, and honestly, for my whole life? What should I be doing? And I think the answer to that, bare minimum, is to educate yourself. It's not up to other people to educate you. It's not up to Black booktubers and Black members of the reading community to educate white people about their circumstances and what's going on. And some of them are still doing that. Some Black booktubers have created videos about their experiences with booktube and their experiences with racism, and that's a heavy emotional burden, and I so appreciate it. And I've linked some of those videos, Mina, and some more down in the description box, videos that I've watched that I've really gotten something out of. But for me, I have to educate myself, and how do I do that? So, books. I believe in the power of books. It's a large part of why I became a librarian, not just because I love to read because it's fun and it's escapist, and those things are true, but because I fundamentally believe that books have power to educate, to inspire, to open up readers to viewpoints they had never considered or never been exposed to. So I'm going to be reading. I am currently reading. I'm going to continue to read both fiction and nonfiction. Fiction by Black authors about Black characters living Black experiences. And nonfiction on racism and anti-racism. Shae at Books with Shae is hosting a read-along this month of White Fragility and White Rage. It's called the Blackout Readathon. If you haven't already watched her video about it, it's going to be linked down below as well. I'm participating in that. I'll be reading both of those books this month, as well as plenty of others. And I hope you do the same, and that's what I'll be doing. Obviously, I'm not an authority on this topic. I'm learning the same as anybody. So if hopefully this is not the only video on this topic that you have watched, but if you haven't watched more, watch Black booktubers videos on how to be an ally, how to be an accomplice, I think is the word that Ashley at Bookish Realm used, which was awesome. So watch their videos. Don't take my word for it at all. All right, so I'm going to briefly wrap up the books that I read in May. I had a terrible reading month. I read 7 books, which is pretty low for me. Clearly quarantine and reading don't correlate well for me. I think it's the fewest books I've read in a month since I started tracking my reading on Goodreads in 2011. I've just had a rough go of it reading-wise. I finished 3 of those 7 books in the last 2 days of the month. So I was not reading basically at all. And I had a lot of hit or miss sort of books, so I'm going to briefly run through them and tell you what I thought. So I started out the month with Where the Forest Meets the Stars by Glendy Vandera, and I gave this one 2 stars. It sounded great, but it needed so much work. It feels unedited. It was poorly written. It feels unedited. And the whole story sort of just crumbles on its foundations when you realize how few actual stakes there are for the main characters. And there's so much drama in the last 25%. It just feels like a soap opera out of the blue. I was just disappointed. I thought it sounded so good, and the cover is beautiful, and hard pass for this one, 2 stars. Then I reread a book. I reread a lot of books in May. Tempt Me at Twilight by Lisa Kleypas. This is a historical romance. It takes place, I think, in the 1850s. It's a hate to love. It's one of my favorites of all time. I don't have much more to say about it. I gave it 5 stars, but honestly, I've reread it so many times, going back years and years and years, I can't be unbiased. So you'll have to take my word with a grain of salt. Then I read Epic by Serena Bowen. This is an MM hockey romance. It's actually a sequel novella. The first book was called Him, the second was called Us, and then this is just like a very quick kind of how are they doing now. It was cute. It was perfectly fine. I enjoyed it fine. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. Then I read Undercover Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams. This is the sequel to the Bromance Book Club. I was let down by this one too. I gave it 3 stars. It just lost the magic and the spark that the first book had. It really didn't use the Bromance Book Club at all, which was such a waste. And I never believed in the characters, the couple, their chemistry. Did they actually fall for each other, or did the book just say they did? It just wasn't strong like the first one, and I really enjoyed the first one, so it was really kind of a letdown. If you've read the first book, you know it alternates between real life, our main characters, and snippets of the historical romance that the book club is reading, and they sort of parallel each other. And I expected this book to have the same because they are reading a romantic thriller, and this kind of acts like a thriller, pretends like it's a thriller, and I thought we would have that same parallel, and it doesn't have that, which was such a bummer because I really enjoyed that element. It was something so different, and I hadn't really read anything like it before. Also, some of the feminist elements that were handled so well in the first book felt forced and just beat me over the head in a way that I just thought wasn't handled well. Especially knowing that the author could do it well, as evidenced by the first book. Sadly, this one did get 3 stars. Then I did yet another reread, and it was The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrina. This is another one I feel like I can't be unbiased about because I read it for the first time when I was in college. It's been like 10 years. I love it. It makes me cry. It is horribly sad in the best way. It's so moving, and the idea of time travel as presented, it feels like real life. It feels like the way time travel would really work. I love it. If you haven't read it, please don't see the movie first. Please read the book first. The movie, we don't talk about that here. Then yet another reread. This was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. My sister and I read this one together. We listened to the audiobook. It was her first time reading it, my second time, and I remembered really loving it the first time, and I really loved it this time too. The whole book feels different once you know the reveal, once you know the ending, once you know what's really happening. Rereading it, I caught so much, and it's all there. It's the exact kind of experience I want to have, where it's all there, all the evidence is there, the signs point to what the truth is, and you just don't catch it. And so you're shocked at the end. But now, having read it a second time, it really is all laid out. And I loved it. I thought it was so well done. And I gave it 4 stars, easy 4 stars. And then the very last book I read in May, The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. I have not read or seen the movie for Practical Magic. This is a prequel that apparently you didn't need to read Practical Magic, and I had not. And I did enjoy it. It had some issues with pacing, but the characters were all beautiful and I really cared about them. And by the end, I was just hooked. But it was a slow going process for me. I did have to, I put it down, I took some time, and I'd pick it back up, put it down, took some time. So that's very much the experience I have. But when I finished it, I felt like I couldn't give it less than 4 stars because I cared about the characters so much, and it did make me cry, and I did have such an emotional reaction. So even though it was very slow and I felt like it could have been trimmed down and there could have been some changes, ultimately I was very glad to have read it, and I gave it 4 stars. So that's it. Those are all the books that I read in May. I am excited for all the books I plan to read in June. I would love to talk to you about anything that I talked about in this video in the comments below. Definitely check out all of the links that I've mentioned, and I will catch you guys in the next video. I hope you're all safe, I hope you're all well, and I'll see you next time.